Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Tuesday morning, and a lot to talk about. There is every day, man. There's new coaches being hired. There's coaches that look. If you hadn't fired your coach by now, I don't think you're going to fire him unless he does something egregious, to use the term. But A&M bringing back Mike Elko as defensive coordinator there for a couple of years. He was successful. He was a good coach. He still is. He went to Duke, and I believe this year won 9 games. If you can win 9 games in football at Duke, you are a really good coach. And I don't know much about his staff, but he knows the A&M landscape. Whoever the people are that make the decisions at A&M, they better trust him. And the fans deserve success. I mean, look, they put so much money into that program, but when you got a cabal at the top of people that are making decisions, and they're given a lot of money, but if they're not smart and they don't know football and they don't know how to read a room, then you got a problem. You got a lot of problems. So I just going to be fun to watch. The thing with Mark Stoops was just a spit show. We know that. Just stupid. And it now I don't know how Mark Stoops shows his face, in public at Kentucky, and how believable is his pitch to recruits. But that's his problem. It damn sure isn't mine. It's not Doug Dean's problem either, because Doug has no problems. He wakes up every morning and says, "It's great to be alive. I live in Vestavia Hills, one of the most beautiful towns in America. I work hard. I love hunting and fishing. And you know what? I am first up in the damn batter's box here on sidelines on this Tuesday morning." And someone said to me, "What one word the morning after the Iron Bowl loss, what one word do you have as an Auburn fan to describe everything that happened and everything?" You know what my one word was? To Mike G, grateful. I am grateful for all I have. And I'm grateful that I was not the one who called Rush only 2. Doug Dean, how are you?
I'm great. War damn eagle anyway, as Suge. No, Suge said,
"You're so right, Carl."
Damn it all anyway. Listen, let's talk about pain and suffering for a minute, Rob.
Yes.
Because I want to give all the delicious post-Iron Bowl joy to my good Bama friends. They probably have this, to borrow a song lyric, they probably have Georgia on their mind a little bit, a lot, I would say. But here's pain and suffering, Rob. If you buy the ESPN analytics percentages, Iron Bowl 2021, Brian Harsin, all we need, we get a stop at 4th and 1. Alabama stopped at midfield under 2 minutes. The analytics at that instant said Auburn, 99% probability of winning. And we found a way to rip defeat from the jaws of victory. 2 years later, same venue, Jordan-Hare Stadium. It wasn't the 4th and 31, Rob. If people look at, I don't know why the middle of games get ignored when we're breaking down a bitter defeat or a big win. The game could have been won when Auburn got down to the 5-yard line, and I give Hugh credit for calling a high-risk, gutty throw into the baseline of the end zone, and Javaris Johnson it was right in his hands, and he had a great game, so you can't be too hard on him. But that would have been 28-20 right there, ball game. Alabama would have had to go for 2, so it's possible it goes to overtime. But at the 4th and 31 moment, Auburn 99% chance to win the Iron Bowl. And quickly, I want to be fair to Ron Roberts. There is certainly a way that calling, putting 8 coverage guys back in zone in the end zone, a tight, restricted area. You're not worried about them getting behind you because you've got 2 or 3 guys standing on the base of the end zone to ready to break on the ball when it's going to go in the air. Not 31 yards. It's going to be in the air 40 yards, Rob. 40 yards. I think you can see that ball coming and break on it. But the reason I didn't like the two, first of all, they wasted a defender, Asante, as a ridiculous spy. And the only reason you have a spy is to stop a run. The best thing Auburn could have hoped for is Milroe to try to run there, because you'd have 9 or 10 guys converging. But I talked to a coach, we may or may not have had him on your show Saturday morning, but I want to protect his anonymity a little bit. The problem with that defensive call, Rob, is it was passive. We played passively, and the Iron Bowl is not meant for people that want to play passive. Now, I want to give you and that staff and this team a hell of a lot of credit for coming in there and ignoring pundits, shaking off the New Mexico State debacle, and they fought they gave Alabama probably their toughest game of the year, except for Texas. So you can't be anything but proud. But I think part of growth going into next year for this coaching staff will be, we're going to decide that even if it costs us a tough loss, we're not calling a game scared ever again. Send 5 or 6 rushers, and the coach I'm talking about told me he would send 6 there. That would have my stomach turning in the north end zone where we sat, where all the drama unfolded. But the point is, you're coming after a quarterback, and you're going to force him to get it out of there in 3 seconds, and it's almost certainly not going to be accurate.
Milroe had 7 seconds in the pocket. I mean, it was like, kids playing football in the neighborhood sandlot game, and he just stood there all day. And I watched one of the Auburn guys playing patty cake with an Alabama offensive lineman. I mean, it's still, you have trauma. I keep waking up and going, are you kidding me? You had that game won. That's like misspelling your own name or getting run down from behind in the chute in a 5K race. That's what I've always told every kid I've ever coached. If you get caught from behind in the chute, that's like misspelling your own name. Don't misspell your own name. Just inexcusable. And I had a friend of mine who's a very high IQ football mind tell me Sunday, and we were driving back from Clarksville, and he said, even the NFL, if you look what they do now, they'll put 7 guys back on the goal line and rush 4. You can't beat that. And, that corner over there reminds me of a horrible 2002 Michael Johnson caught that ball in the Auburn, Georgia game and got the win over there in the corner. How do you make it? But give credit to Isaiah Bond. The ball was out of bounds, and he was able to keep his body. That's a lot of time in the weight room, a lot of planks. It's a lot of ab work, and keep his feet in bounds. He made a great catch. But I got to say this, Robbie Ashford, what's he in? And then he photobombs right there at the end of the game when Saban's being interviewed and to talk to Milroe. I'd have been with my teammate. Go say.
I just interjecting that he goes over there for photo op as if he had played the whole game with courage.
Yeah, that's my deal. And now, Doug, there are a lot of questions coming in from people. But I got to say to you right now, by the way, big get for Auburn last night. Kalen Edwards, 6'5", 330-pound defensive lineman out of Dyersburg, Tennessee, home of David Baker, one of my good friends in my Curcio group, our county, Jay Paul, great folks up there. But man, Yancy Porter called me Saturday night, and he was like, I feel like I had a counselor. He said, Rob, I'll guarantee you, Hugh Freeze isn't pouting about this. He's in some recruit's living room right now or entertaining a bunch of them. He's relentless. I like what David in Memphis said. Nobody will ever be able to justify rushing only 2 against Milroe. They'll be talking about this for decades.
But let me great take there, and thank David for his point. I couldn't agree more. Now, try to be fair. I think if what you want to do is really blanket Alabama could only send 5 receivers out by rule. So Auburn had 8 to their 5 back. But if you're going to when you're rushing 2 and they're also tired, people tend to forget that factor. We don't have the depth on our front, but they fought courageously to get it to. They got 2 3-and-outs on Alabama. The problem is we had quit doing anything offensively, didn't have the play calls. Alabama had adjusted and figured Auburn out. And you knew that, Auburn's chance, it was going to probably be like that. I thought it was brilliant to be run heavy because if you've seen what Dallas Turner can do to people if you stand back there in the pocket too many times, which could be Carson Beck's challenge this coming Saturday. But I have a friend who's played for Coach Blakeney at Troy, played linebacker. He's a head coach of a prominent high school football team in Alabama, really follows the game closely. He's an Auburn man. Here was his, and it's somewhat technical, but I know you've got some listeners who appreciate that. Here is his exact take on when I asked him what he would do in that 4th and 31 situation. He said, I would have rushed 4, certainly having Marcus Harris on the field. I would have brought 3 rushers from the wide side of the field, forcing Milroe to work back to the boundary. So you're using the short side of the field as a defender. I would have had 3 defenders in deep thirds, so that's back in the middle of the end zone. The other 4 in deep quarters, 5 yards deep in the end zone, or I might play 5 under 2 man coverage. But that said, Ron Roberts' call works if Zion Puckett doesn't stand dead ass flat on the back line like a bad little league outfielder. I know that's harsh, but you got to call it like you see it, and he'll learn. And he never broke on the ball. He had the time, depth, and angle to break. Hang on, to break and high point that ball. And Auburn, man,
you're breaking up, but
did you get me?
It will be talked about for decades to come.
Am I breaking up, Rob?
And I think Auburn fans will look at this and they will say, and fans of college football will study this. They will show this. It will be showed at clinics. How what not to do. Doug, we lost you there for a second. Everything sort of froze, but you were making a great take about you left it at Zion Puckett standing there like a totem pole on the back of the goal line.
Yeah, like a bad little league outfielder, my friend says, who's a coach. He had the time, depth, and angle to break and high point that ball. It should have looked like a double team with him breaking on the ball in the air. And here's the problem where DJ James should not, Auburn people or anyone, should not be the GOAT in this game. Technically, he will be. No. But they were asking James to essentially man cover for 8 seconds. There's not an NFL cover guy that is capable of that. So, and furthermore, the coach I referred to earlier, a veteran of SEC defensive coaching, said he would have pressured from the side to make Milroe go left so that he has to throw against his body since he's a right-handed quarterback. But he's standing there. He's able to get his feet set. And, you got to give Alabama credit for the play design. It looked like they put 3 or 4 receivers just parked in the middle of the end zone, and it sort of lured Puckett over there to give. And then right when the ball went in the air, Bond broke toward that back corner pylon on a predetermined. I think Milroe was throwing to a landmark, throwing to a spot. So brilliant play design. Saban, I give credit for saying, those are these high or low probability plays, and we finally had one go our way. So I appreciated Saban's humility in the moment.
Yeah, he has had to coach more than I can ever remember him coaching with this team. And
that's the truth.
11-1 record. Yeah. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, he's had to work with them because he was so successful for so long, and he still is. But I think he over delegated, and I think he had to go back and get involved more in the meeting rooms than he had been in a while.
No question. And that's what sort of squares with what we've all agreed on your show Saturday morning. And prior to that, especially your guest, Dave, is it Compton is his last name?
Dave Tompkins. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I always mess his name up. Dave Tompkins, great guy. He agreed that if Saban manages to get into the playoff, they need a little help by one Florida State losing perhaps this Saturday, and they'll get to control beating Georgia, but I think they're going to need one other team, one lost team to lose, but and probably need Texas to lose, but we'll see. But if he gets in the playoff and wins it, this is hands down Saban's greatest coaching job in his career.
Yeah, I've been saying, and Rodney Orr will be on in the second hour for the May Veterinary Clinic Tighter Insider Report. And I've been saying to him all year, since I get the last half, especially, I think he'll look back at this as his favorite team he ever coached at Alabama. I just do. And, what was Suge's favorite team? The 1972 team, without a doubt, the Amazons. And they were picked 9th out of 10 in the SEC. And I'm going to call it, I'm going to say it on the show for the record. Auburn beat Alabama in the head-to-head match. Alabama played an extra game against Vanderbilt or something. I want bumper stickers. Let's start doing it. To hell with it. There are no rules. Auburn, the 1972 SEC champions. I recognize them as the SEC champions. He loved that team. You had guys like Terry Henley out of Oxford, Mickey Zofko. So many guys had left from the year before, were gone. But I just think that Auburn, I like this Walter in Coleman, Alabama, home of the Abbey, St. Bernard's Abbey. Little bit of trivia, man. Who's the greatest, arguably the greatest field goal kicker in Auburn history? Where was he from and where was he found before he transferred to Auburn?
Yeah, and Auburn market's a little weak-kneed. I think there's in the DNA of Auburn's culture, which in many ways I admire, in other ways it works against you. We put ourselves in a minority of football programs that are kind of worried about what people might think of us if we claim some of the national championship back when it was mythical pre-BCS. Yeah. And even when it was a 2-team BCS, why can't AP and UPI run their poll? And if they're so inclined, they vote a second. You have 2 champions like we used to have when the sports writers and coaches decided national champions. So I think we should be bolder. For example, Rob, you would never hear Pepsi say, "We are proud to be the second best tasting Diet Cola." You would never hear that, yep. Would you? No. You tell your story confidently, and I like the fact that Hugh Freeze is doing that. By the way, testimonial from anonymous recruit, 5-star, who was at the Iron Bowl among the 120 other recruits, and that's insane. Auburn did not hurt itself at all, despite that bitter loss. And I need to footnote for this game, without taking one scintilla of credit away from Alabama, they didn't play a perfect game, but they executed it when the deck was stacked against them late. But I will say this, if I'm honest with myself, Rob, I got most of what I wanted from that Iron Bowl. Most of what I wanted I felt like it was slightly greedy to expect a win. If you look at the 2 rosters, Alabama's stacked with 4 and 5 stars. Auburn's working on that. But the game was that big 4th and 31 should have been irrelevant at the end. And this is what Freeze is going to have to put players in place to understand. The game could have gotten won. This is where it irritates me that fans tend to ignore the middle 2 quarters of a game. What I mean by that is when you get a ball up near midfield, you got to make the right play call, the right execution, and have the attitude that we're going to frigging put this football in the end zone and put this game away, get an 8 or 12 point lead, and make it nearly impossible for your opponent to make it turn it into a miracle play at the very end. But I will tell you, sitting in that north end, the drama in 60 seconds, Rob, when I saw Bama fans sulking in their seats, despairing, and 30 seconds later they were on their feet in elation. That was the Iron Bowl in one moment.
It was. You saw so much in the last minute. That's what we love about college football. By the way, I'm a big fan of Dan Bongino.
No doubt.
You read his commentary about Southerners, and he speaks from the heart. I mean, it was great. Say what you want about Yankees, but I've always just loved these street folk, people that grew up in Brooklyn and Queens, and just they're tough people, especially the Italians. I mean, they're Catholic. You can't get any better. I mean, I'll tell you.
And I'll tell you, Rob,
He's
I know
unbelievable.
this isn't the Rob Browne Politico show, but
No, I know.
since you brought it up, comparing cultures, I've got friends all across the East Coast that I like. If New Yorkers are inclined to relocate in the South, we welcome them as long as they come from the Dan Bongino strain of New York.
Yes.
Please keep
yeah.
your residence if you intend to live life woke.
Yeah, you hadn't really lived until you've been to a real pizza joint in Brooklyn or, Staten Island or something. It just the guy speaks from the heart. I mean, you know what he done, but he gets it. And just like when I talked with Matt Dean, having hunted out in Iowa and South Dakota a lot, they're great people out there. You will not find finer people than those Iowa Hawkeye and Iowa State and Kansas State fans. If you've been around, and that's what I love about college football. And here we are, Mallory, my oldest daughter now, but I remarried and she's number 4 now on the roster. And she was worried about me after the game. She was telling Audrey, is Rob okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. I mean, I'm up there, I was in my own hell. But there's also, I saw so much fight in that team. And Auburn bows to no one. Auburn apologizes to no one. And if Auburn wants to claim their 10 national championships, then by God, do it. You don't have to wait for permission from somebody else, for the bully across the street to say it's okay to come outside and play. You know what?
Yeah.
What did Suge say that time Auburn was a big underdog in the Iron Bowl? He said something. He goes, well, as I recall, David was about a 40-point underdog to Goliath.
Yeah, fans, great take. Fans, universally, unless it's your team that's the heavy favorite, fans live for these huge upsets. Yeah. But when you're building a program like Freeze intends to, and there are others across the SEC, Lane Kiffin's doing good work there. When Ole Miss becomes they average 10-win seasons, that's new territory for Hottie Toddy. Yeah. And credit Kiffin, and what he's going to work on is breaking through that ceiling of how do you put a roster together or a style of play that throws a curveball to the Georgias and Alabamas who are so stacked with practically NFL talent. But the thing is, I want to preach a little, which you're better at on the show, Rob, but I have no patience with what I perceive to be mostly the younger, entitled fan segment, probably in every program. I'm not picking on the Auburn family. There are a few fan bases that will match Auburn in loyalty, and you saw it on display 1 week after that New Mexico State debacle. You saw them probably the most intense Iron Bowl I've seen since the 89, the first game there. It was unbelievable. So credit fans, but to that younger, mostly younger segment that will, when you compliment the effort of this Auburn team, that's an undermanned roster, no matter how you want to analyze it, there's some stars there like Jacques Hunter and a few others, and Marcus Harris and some of the secondary guys like Simpson and Keontae. But you can talk about great effort without being criticized or being called wussy that you're valuing moral victories. There's a big difference. Coach Dye understood that in 81. This season really parallels 1981. He was 5-6. And he didn't abuse his players verbally in the media. He appreciated he saw their effort, and he knew that when we brought freshmen in, that was going to translate, and that effort was going to translate to those new freshmen like Bo Jackson. And then all of a sudden, when you have the raw talent and you add to it effort as part of your culture, then you start becoming the team that is outmanning everybody else. So I'd say screw yourself to the fan that wants to slap you around that you're calling something good effort a moral victory.
No, there are no moral victories. I mean, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. That's just how it is. But I will say, talking to Dad and I, analyzing the game at 95, he was a 30-year-old. He's unbelievable. Continue to work out every day you can. He rides the bike and lifts weights every day. That's the sick, and have some wine and good scotch and waters. But and a bowl of ice cream every night. But what's cool to me was just that Eugene Asante.
Yeah, he's going pro, by the way.
He's the Edmund Nelson remember Edmund Nelson out of Tampa? He had the great baritone voice. He was a DJ on Weagle on Sunday afternoons. He did a jazz show. How about Danny Skutak? Remember Danny Skutak out of Opelika? Those are the guys that I grew up cheering for Auburn. Mike Neal, Bill Luca from Memphis, Bob Browne, Jack Elam, Mickey Zofko, Wallace Clark, Terry Henley, Phil Gargas. Win or lose, you have their back. And I will say this. I saw some stuff on recruiting, also like you did. And one thing I've learned, I got to kind of look into recruiting. Whether you win or lose, it's not it. It's the reaction of the crowd, the fans, the atmosphere. So if you're mad and you want to say something ugly, watch your mouth, because those recruits are all around you and they hear that. Just like if you are at a game and someone's cussing their 8-year-old child on the basketball court from the stands, a parent, as Rosanna Dana used to say on Saturday Night Live, you got a problem. That's not cool. I think Auburn fans showed something special.
Yeah, let me be clear. I would equally, and politely and in a civil way, I would disagree with a fan that thinks it's just fine to lose 4 or 5 games a year as long as the eagle flies good. No, that's not. Hugh Freeze himself said, and this is the important point. He said, we are judged in this business by wins and losses. You know that when you sign up to be a head coach, and we shouldn't feel sorry for them with the, several million a year contracts. Speaking of which, in the weirdest of winding paths that only College Station could match Auburn in, Mark Stoops was hired before he was not hired, and then you get the denials. But I think in the end, Mike Elko's tenure is going to make Aggie fans happy. It may take a little while. And I also think Jeff Lebby is going to quickly put offense on the field to make that Egg Bowl a shootout in the 40s most years. So fascinating coaching carousel moves. And with Elko gone at Duke, then the dominoes start falling. It'll be interesting to see which coaches get opportunities to move up and how that creates departures with some of the staffers at various programs.
Yeah, Elko hire, he's been there before, but I like that. I like Lebby. Lebby, Ole Miss people will tell you he was impressive, to say the least. Big part of what Kiffin did.
Yep.
But Mississippi. I think that's a quote big boy hire. Mitch Davis loves it, and I do too. And I'll say something else. Jacques Doucet, stay on with us if you can. Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge, is coming on with us now. And I want to take a quick commercial break. But Doug, I got to tell you something, man. You're like you are Bob Newhart type of writer. You no matter what happens, you were able to get takeaways from it and make sense. And I've watched a few games with my brother-in-law. It's changed my perspective on some things, because 26 years in the Marine Corps, where he's been, he doesn't get rattled. He doesn't.
No, you can't. It's just a game. We don't feel that way in here. But you've got family, you've got people that depend on you, love you, and you got work and careers, and got to produce an income. You can't let one game just unravel you for weeks on end.
Yeah, you can. And watching it with Kurt, and his shoulders are as rolled across as like a 2x4. I mean, and it's just that mentality of people. But I got to credit you. I got tons of comments, and I'm getting them this morning. I can't type them all in. I cannot. I got to, because I'll lose focus. But one of them encapsulated everything. Doug's a great writer. He just has great sense and wit. We need more of Doug Dean. Doug Dean, hang on with us. Again, Jacques Doucet, 2-time Louisiana Sportscaster of the Year, now the sports director, WAFB Channel 9 down in Baton Rouge, a native of Lafayette, a man who has had some crawfish etouffee before, but I doubt he's ever had beef tongue with mock shoe gravy like our boys from Lake Charles made for us about a month ago up here for the weekend and they were some of the best kids we've ever had up here. One of the members brought a bunch of his friends up here. They all made their beds every morning. I mean, that right there tells me we got a great future in America. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Dean, I know you got one more snippet to get in here real quick before we bring Jacques Doucet on, and let's go.
Jacques, I can't wait to have him on. I'll stick around for a couple of minutes. You know, when your regular season is over, thank goodness Coach Freeze and this team managed to have that 3-game win streak and punch their ticket to be in what looks like it might be Music City. It might be I love it, the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte. I love that mayonnaise, by the way.
Yeah.
Duke's about as good. But so now the attention gets turned to finishing strong. Freeze doesn't have to worry about playing in Atlanta. He's already, I'm sure, got visits going, but also the transfer portal. And so we can be proud of how Peyton Thorne grew and developed and showed some flashes of brilliance, but he's still not what I would call a complete, can't miss quarterback. You need depth. You need competition. I don't know how it will shake, but with Elko gone to A&M, Rob, keep an eye on Riley Leonard, of all things, a South Alabama Fairhope High School product, the kid at Duke who had really played very well against some good competition. And I think Notre Dame really hopes he gets in the portal. They got a shot at him. But Auburn Tigers, Rob, be careful betting against love. Riley Leonard's girlfriend, all the way back to high school, is a student at Auburn University. So
Yeah,
it could be love against what big helmet logo he wants to look like in.
I agree. I'm going to keep watching that one for sure. Jacques Doucet, man, welcome aboard. Have you ever had beef tongue with mock shoe gravy before?
Well, one time on a Sunday, I think my dad cooked some rice and gravy, and I was eating it, and I said, "Man, this is pretty good. What is this?" And he said, "That's cow tongue." And I said, "Yuck." And
You've done it.
It says, "It's too late. You already said it was good." So
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know if we had mock shoe with it, corn or not, but definitely nice.
Hey,
gravy.
Jacques, you will love. I'm Doug Dean. Good to see you, Jacques.
Hey, Doug.
I'll try to keep my broken French pronunciation respectable for you, but you'll love this. This summer, Rob knows that my twin daughters, not one but both, had their first baby, both baby boys. Named them Jack and Henry. So being the clown that I am, I call them, to my daughter's irritation, I call them Henri and Jacques.
There you go.
That's definitely the English or the French translation of those names. Yeah, Jacques is like Jack in Paris for sure, and Doucet is kind of like Smith. So.
Hey, Jacques, I'm gonna steal Rob's hosting capabilities for a second before I sign off. You're limited to one answer. What do you looking across the college football landscape this year? What do you think is the most significant or bombshell or impactful event, whether it's a game or some other factor in college football? What will you remember from this 2023 football season?
Well, I don't want to go with recency bias, but certainly I've never seen somebody give up a 4th and goal from the 31-yard line to
Oh, wow.
lose the game. So
A
that,
dubious distinction.
what's that?
I said, Rob, I regret even asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking shocking things that happened. I'm going to think of it the second we go off the air here, but that sticks out to me. Deion Sanders won a couple of games early against teams that weren't all that great, that captivated the country. I'm not shocked that they went 4-8 after that. What about you? Maybe bounce some ideas off me, and I can say, oh yeah, that's it.
Well, this one's still unfolding, but I guess, and this is just chalk. This is not overly inventive or original, but I think the story, and credit the Georgia Bulldogs, the story continues to be, and this Saturday will be a determining factor in whether it's a real story or not. But the question of, can a college football team in the modern era three-peat? It was back all the way back into the 1930s. Minnesota did it, of all things. And Coach Saban was one kick six disaster away from a chance to three-peat in 2013. So, Georgia's got a huge task ahead of them. I actually like Alabama in a close one this Saturday. I'm probably in a minority on that. But to me, the question of, can Georgia do it again, is the compelling story until it's not.
Yeah. Well, and then just me locally covering Jaden Daniels, who went from a good quarterback to an elite quarterback in one off season, certainly was a huge story. I don't think any LSU fan would have believed that he would be a finalist for the Heisman Trophy or have a shot at winning it. So, and on the negative side, that an LSU program so traditionally strong on defense could perhaps field its worst defensive team ever. I don't want to get caught up in hyperbole, but I mean, that's how bad they've been.
Terrible timing. All you needed was average on defense, right?
2019, LSU had that offense, and this offense really could compete with that one. But in 2019, you had Dave Aranda, and the defense was, B minus, C plus. It wasn't like 2003 LSU Nick Saban national championship defense. But it was complimentary. This defense can't compliment anything.
Rob,
really.
I'm going to get out of y'all's way. Y'all have a great one, gentlemen.
Happy holidays.
Doug,
nice meeting you.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Jacques, and I was getting some stuff yesterday from two of my great LSU friends, Warren A. Bud Ritchie, former Dean Wormer, Assistant Dean of Student Affairs for 18 years at LSU. I'm sure he broke up a few parties before, but love him up here in Memphis. And he cooks a lot. I do some stuff over at Rhodes College with him. And another one, Pierre T. Landash from Baton Rouge. And Pierre grew up south of Venice. We got a lot of LSU people in Memphis. Trust me. I'm walking around with an LSU koozie, but Browne, what's happened? I'm like, look, I'm an 8'7", WWL out of New Orleans, 870, listening to LSU football as a kid. I've always been an Auburn fan, but I've always just been fascinated by it. I think what I love about LSU is the people down there are the kind of people I love them. They're fun, get together, but man, if you're in a rush, you cannot microwave the food they cook. And we all, if they don't start cooking till 3 p.m, we ain't eating till midnight. I mean, and that's just the way it is. But man, Pierre and Bud Ritchie sent this to me yesterday. It's a comparison. You've seen it. It's Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., and Bo Nix. And look at their stats. It's every statistical category you can break down. And you look at the 3 lost Heisman Trophy winners. I know Robert Griffin III did it in 2011. Tim Tebow did it in 2007. And there's another one. And then before you and I were even born, Paul Hornung did it with a 2-8 Notre Dame team. But Frank Duffy, go Tigers. He was on yesterday with us. Mr. LSU Tiger, part of our team. He said, without Jaden Daniels, LSU might be 6-6. You see him every day. You are there. How good is this guy as a quarterback? Because I think he's the Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah, LSU's never had a more electric runner as a quarterback. And I would even, wonder how he compares to wide receivers and running backs in terms of his almost what seems like an effortless glide when he runs, and defenders look like they're just pumping their arms, and he a lot of times is like looking over his shoulder back at them. I mean, certainly I was on here with you right after the Florida game, perhaps the greatest performance we've ever seen from an LSU quarterback, at least statistically. Rushing for 232 and throwing for 372 or something like that. It was over 600 yards of total offense. And so, and his passing, last year, a lot of people said he can't throw the deep ball. He doesn't trust himself. And really, I think back, I mean, I've gone through those highlights many times, editing stories and whatnot. And I can remember like one or two times he really threw a bomb, threw it deep. This year, he's done it a lot. And then, the receivers he's got, do Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. compare to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson? We'll see when they get into the NFL. We'll see how they do. I don't know if LSU's got a running back on this team that put up, or definitely didn't put up the numbers that Clyde Edwards-Helaire put up in that offense. But it's very comparable. And, LSU went to Alabama and had 28 points going into the fourth quarter, which I don't think you can ask much more than that. Jaden gets knocked out of the game, and the defense just couldn't stop Jalen Milroe all day on third down.
Yeah. No. Well, it is. Look, I watched Jaden Daniels, that 85-yard touchdown run he had. I mean, I'm thinking the two most athletic quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. I'm going to say it, Cam Newton. Here's the crazy. All three of these guys up for the Heisman, well, the three finalists, in my opinion, according to, Bud Ritchie and Pierre T. Landash, and you can't argue with those guys. They're all transfers. Arizona State, Jaden Daniels is a California kid. And Michael Penix Jr. left Indiana to go to Washington with Kalen DeBoer, who was offensive coordinator at Indiana, went there to be head coach. And then Bo Nix, he could not stand being in the same room with Brian Harsin because he saw no future with that guy. And the people, let me say this for the record, that were responsible for hiring Brian Harsin should be banned and given a restraining order that they cannot get within 100 miles of Auburn's campus. A guy who did not believe in recruiting. I mean, that's like somebody that moves to Louisiana that doesn't like shellfish. I'm sorry. You're not allowed. Just don't even come over. You can't go to Mittendorf. You can't go to Galatoire's. You can't go to Best Stop Grocery. That's where you get the great. But we, by the way, our Cajun guys brought us 400 pounds of boudin last year. 400 on one delivery. I mean, that's a lot of boudin. But I got to say, Jaden Daniels to me is the most valuable player. He's exactly what Heisman Trophy is supposed to be, because I think Washington and Oregon are pretty good. Not that they want those quarterbacks, but I think Jaden Daniels is the most important player to his team, and he plays tougher competition, better defenses.
Well, and a lot of LSU fans picked up on it that Kirk Herbstreit, who's one of the more influential people in college football, came on the game day show on Saturday morning and said, "Oh, he's going to win it. He's the best player. He's going to win it." And they were like, "Oh, really? I mean, it's already decided." And I don't think it's already decided. It's just going to be the narrative of if Bo Nix has a good performance this week and wins, and people say, he's on the team that won a championship, and Jaden Daniels is on a team that's lost 3 games. Now, anybody that takes a look at LSU's schedule realizes that Jaden Daniels is not the reason why they lost any of those 3 games. They can't point to him and say, well, he threw 3 interceptions in Tuscaloosa or Oxford or against Florida State. And so, it's that debate. Is it the best player, or do you get caught up in, best team, or best player on best team? So, he changes, and LSU's a 9-3 team. They're playing for a 10th win in a bowl game. But to your earlier point, I mean, if he's not on this team, LSU's on thin ice, and it could be a 6-6 team or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and here's one from Shoney down in Valdosta, Georgia. Ask Jacques. Well, he didn't spell it right. Right. $5 fine. No. Ask Jacques if he ever worked with Buddy D. Did you?
Buddy D, look at Skinner in the Superdome. No, I grew up listening to Buddy. I met him in person a few times. I did a couple stories on him when the Saints went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
In 2009, because Buddy always said that if the Saints went to the Super Bowl, he'd show up wearing a dress. And so he had passed away by the time the Saints went to the Super Bowl. So they had like a parade where all these men wore dresses in honor of Buddy D. A couple of quick, Buddy D, he called Kevin Mawai Kevin Mawai. I heard that on the air one time. He had Dan Radakovich on the air. And boy, you talk about trying to pronounce that name. Oh, Dan Radakovich. And so Buddy was beloved, probably one of the most famous sportscasters, sports personalities in the history of Louisiana, but also warmly embraced for his mispronunciations and mistakes as well. So, but yeah, Buddy D, a legendary guy. And I also see you saying QB coach at LSU at least deserves a Joe Brady type upgrade. So what he's saying, you're talking about the guy who's coaching quarterback should get an NFL job, I guess. Is that what he means?
Yeah, he may be wanting him to get out of LSU so nobody has to deal with him, but I'm not sure. But yeah, and Joe Brady's now with who? The Vikings?
Buffalo Bills, right?
Oh, Buffalo. Okay, Buffalo.
Yeah, I think that's right.
He's not but 33, 34 years old.
Oh, he was 28 when LSU had him. Hired him from the Saints. He was basically getting coffee for Sean Payton when they brought him over. And then, won the Frank Broyles Award for the assistant coach of the year. Now, look, there's a lot of discussion. Steve Ensminger was technically the offensive coordinator that year, but Joe Brady got a lot of credit for bringing in the spread attack and different things they did. Steve Ensminger had zero ego. He didn't care who won the Broyles Award and got the credit. He's going to the NFL, was fired with the Carolina Panthers, I believe. And, definitely a very bright mind, very young mind. Yeah.
And Buddy D would be the Cajun equivalent of Harry Carey because, he could not pronounce those names. Hector Villanueva, Hector Villashavez. And he could not, he would call a guy like, he'd take the name and butcher it to call him Ho Chi Minh or something. But another one that I grew up with as a Hap Glaudy. Remember him? King Edward Cigar Time is 6 o'clock, like checking traffic across the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. We got an oyster truck down there about halfway across the sky. Everybody just have a beer and have a good time. But King Edward Cigar Time is 7 o'clock here in the city, WWL New Orleans. And every time there's a hurricane, they'd always have somebody down at Port Morgan. Is it Port Morgan, Louisiana, south of I-10 that was hanging out? They'd say, we're going to stay. We got a business down here, a family business. We're going to ride it out. They go, this thing's a Cat 5 coming through. We know, but we're going to be okay. They always will find that one guy.
Yeah, one of my favorite Buddy D stories, I was listening to him, and the Saints were going through one of those years, and they won a game, and they were 4-6 or something like that. And some guy called in and said, Buddy, I tell you what's going to happen. I got a feeling we're going to win these next 6 games in a row, and we're going to go 10-6 and make the playoffs. And Buddy D goes, you, sir, are living in La La Land. Do me a favor there, Jim. Take a picture of where you're at and send it to me so I can see what La La Land looks like. Those are the kind of things in the post-game show, So, D.
I tell you, and one that I met, that the Baton Rouge media, I don't know what's more fun, the New Orleans or the Baton Rouge, but T-Bob Hebert, he got on the elevator.
Bobby, obviously.
Yes, he is a trip. I mean, he's super nice guy, but there's so much, we know about Jimmy Ott, the Ott father. We have him on the show a lot. Scott Rabelais. My wife said, is Scott Rebelsis coming on the show? I'm like, it's Rabelais. And I tell Tanner Smith, and his moms and their family are the Stein home and yard people all over Louisiana. And he's like, man, there's a lot of Rabelais in the phone book in Baton Rouge. It's like my friend Jeff Heimbach. I'm over in Munich one time. I'm not kidding you. I looked in the phone book at the train station just to see how many Heimbachs there were. I stopped at 19 pages. I mean, there's a lot of Heimbachs in Germany, just not as many of them. And over here, police might pull you over and call you Mr. Heimbach or whatever. But looking at LSU right now, you brought Pete Jenkins back. He's arguably the best defensive line coach, technician anywhere. He's loved everywhere he and his wife have ever been. They've been at Auburn. They've been at a lot of schools. How much of an impact can he have with what LSU has to work with? And LSU and a few other schools like Auburn and Florida and Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson, they always have 2 and 3 deep on that front 7. How did LSU get away from that? Just coaching changes, the portal. What can you put your finger on?
Well, I think they've had a rotating door, and when it comes to the D-line coach, they have not. I think they've had 4 and 5 years or something like that. Ed Ogeron, that was his specialty when he was the head coach, was the defensive line, and I think that they just have not hit in recruiting and in the transfer portal as much as they would have liked. This year I think they've got 22 sacks as a team. And it was evident in the game this past weekend against a 3rd-string quarterback in Texas A&M. I think they got him a couple times late in the game, but for the most part, he was back there all day to throw, no pressure. And no pressure combined with the soft secondary is a bad combination. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in these next 7 days, 10 days. If Coach Kelly, if he fires Matt House, the defensive coordinator, or if he somehow can sell it that, hey, I'm bringing back Matt House. He's a good defensive coordinator. We just had bad personnel. We had a bad year. We've got bad defensive coaches beneath him. And if they clear out the Robert Steeples, Kerry Cooks, those guys, and keep House, and can they hit the portal, hit recruiting, and bring in some talent? But I think that's a big difference today, Rob, from the past. I think that coaches and ADs and whatnot, they were more insulated. They were more separated from the fan base, from society. And now with combative media, I don't even want to call it social media. It doesn't seem like many people go on there to socialize. I'll go on there to fight. But anyway, with social media and pressure and big time contracts and fans paying for tickets and for tradition funds and parking and all this stuff, is the outcry just so great that you've got to make a change and get rid of the coach, defensive coordinator, and others. We'll see about that. But at the same time, if you're Coach Kelly and you're on a guaranteed $80 million contract after this year, I'm going to do things my way. What are you going to do? Fire me? So it's interesting. We'll see what happens.
Well, it is. And you've got to be able to play. You cannot have a good – people always will say that the secondary is the problem of the team. Well, if you don't have a pass rush, have a chance in the secondary. You saw in the Auburn game, Jalen Milroe had over 7 seconds to stand in the pocket. That's an eternity. And you might 3 seconds, but if you put a rush on the quarterback, you're forcing him to throw on the run. That changes everything. But it's like somebody who can shoot on the run. We watch TV shows, it looks like that. It ain't like that in reality. You've got to do a lot of things right. But looking at LSU recruiting wise, by default, they're going to be in the top 5, top 10 every year just by location. But you're right. It's about getting it right in the portal. Who are some guys, when you look at the portal, started October 15th of 2018, in the last 5 years, I'm starting to see some changes. And by that, I mean, guys are starting to realize the grass may look greener on the other side of the, but it's still got to be cut. The problems that you have at school A follow you to B in school C. And as Frank called him, serial quitter, Max Johnson is on the move again. At some point, you've got to dig your feet in and fight, because when you go apply for a job, what is the potential employer going to do when he looks at your resume? You moved from here to here to here to here. So every time I throw something tough at you, you're going to quit on me? That's what they better be thinking about. I know they probably aren't, but that's going to what gets them.
Yeah, and you got a guy like Denver Harris, for example, that LSU took in off the transfer portal. Former, I think he was a 5-star defensive back. Attitude problems at Texas A&M, they kick him off. Attitude problems over here. He hasn't played, and it doesn't look like he's going to have a future. He's going to wake up one day and say, can you believe I had 2 chances at 2 premier SEC schools and I blew them both? And I think it's a case of, it's back to the Cecil Collins thing, almost 30 years ago. When you grow up that talented, entitled maybe, and it's always, well, these guys are going to tell me no, but somebody else is going to tell me yes. Everyone's going to tell me yes. And, every case is different. Bo Nix found a better place. Joe Burrow found a better place. But for every one of those guys, it seems like there's another 50 who, don't want to face competition, responsibility. I covered Max Johnson. I know and interviewed, Brad. His dad's a winner, and they're a great family and all that.
Yeah, sure.
But it's funny to see how it goes because Max Johnson and his brother Jake, I remember shooting them at a camp. They both loved LSU. Oh, they love LSU. They love Coach L, blah, blah, blah. And then they both at A&M. And now Max is out at A&M. So, and then what does his brother Jake do? Is he staying there? Is he going somewhere else? I don't know. But yeah, it definitely, it's not good. It's not good for the product either. It's not good at senior day to have a bunch of guys running out that have played with you 1 year, Yeah. What happened to the 3 and 4 year guy that the fan gets invested in? Some of these guys, the fans don't even know them because they hadn't been around that long.
Yeah. I remember Buddy Martin, GatorbaitMedia.com last year when Tony, the defensive coordinator for Florida, left, and he'd been there so relatively short period of time. He said, I would say, I'll miss you. I hate to see you go, but I never knew you. I mean, that's where, and I think Mac Browne going into the 2022 season said on the Paul Feinbaum show that over 4,000 kids were still out there in the portal. I mean, basically they're in athletic purgatory, for lack of a better term. And they're going to, you've got, I know, them and I know them, the guys that stuck it out, that, I mean, there's a guy, Nicky Savoy. Remember him at LSU, tight end?
Sure, big tight end, number 11.
Yeah, and I think he worked for Regions Morgan Keegan on the bond desk as a trader or whatever. Because, I mean, all my friends up here in Memphis knew him, and everybody did. They're going, that guy was a tough, but that's who he is, okay? And I worked with a guy on the trading floor at Duncan Williams who played at Alabama. He was a walk-on, 5'7" receiver. His dad was a coach on the staff. I go, how many concussions did you get? And he goes, 7 that I can remember. But you know what? He's got that ring from the 99 SEC championship team, and he's a graduate, and he stuck it out, and graduated, and he's got the respect of people that'll say, you know what? You never quit. That's the critical part about it, So you've got to learn that you cannot quit. You can't give up. And when things get tough, tie another knot in the rope and hang on. I mean, would you tell your own kids to do that? Hell no. And coaches don't like it. And it's driven some of them out of coaching. It drives me crazy. But look, I know you got a big day to you. Let people know how they can follow you, keep up with you, talk about the documentary on Cecil Collins, whatever you want to say. But first off, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I love it. I told Pierre and Bud you were on here, and people love it when you're on because you are a magnanimous personality, but you're authentic and you work your ass off, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And I see Pierre's comment. I'm glad he watched the Cecil Collins documentary. I appreciate that, Pierre. And see Carrie also remembers Cecil. And to your point, Matt Flynn, 5th-year senior, sat behind Jamarcus Russell and all these other quarterbacks. His 5th year, he led LSU to a national championship as a QB in 2007. Nick Browne didn't score a touchdown to his senior season, ran for 1,000 yards and scored 14, 15 touchdowns in 2018. So it's those kind of stories that you want to emphasize with people who are always, hopping around. But WAFB is our station, WAFB.com. Find me on Twitter at Jacques Doucet or X, I should say, and Facebook as well. And I always appreciate you having me on.
Are you going to New York for the Heisman?
We've got the plane ticket and the hotel booked. We're going to be leaving next Thursday. I went up when Joe won it. That was kind of a slam dunk, biggest landslide in Heisman history. This is going to be a lot different. I think it's going to be what's going to happen. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.
But to get you on that Saturday, December 9th, live from New York on the Saturday morning show, possibly if you got time. I want. Yeah, this is the big. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and book it.
I'll see what the schedule's like, but
okay, he's gonna win it, man. Hey, thanks. Have a great day.
All right, thanks for having me, man. Good to see you.
Okay, let's bring in Justin Ross here right now. I want to introduce one of our new sponsors here. On my British web designer says the Vitamin Shop, but Vitamin Shop. Justin Ross, I've known him a long time. Played his college football at Rhodes College in Memphis. Great man. I was blessed and privileged to coach BR, the PR, one of his daughters, one of the best athletes we've ever had. Best kids. She'd look you right in the eye, yes or no, sir, and go out and perform. That's why you love coaching. We're talking about the portal and kids sticking it out. You know, I'm not feeling it today. Well, you better find it because the other 4 over there are needing you to show up today. But I know you lived a couple of years over in the Netherlands. You were a college football junkie, a member of St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis, and a lawyer, a smart man. I know a lot of smart people, but you're really, man, I'm so fired up having someone that I know and I've coached their kids be a sponsor of the show. But let's talk about the Vitamin Shop. Tell people what your mission is, what you do, your locations and everything like that, and why they want to shop with you. Because I go there. I love it.
You got it, Rob. Hey, man, we're excited to be a sponsor of the show. Really fired up. Hey, my kids took all their good traits from their mom. You know that. None from me. So I'm not going to take any of that credit. But, hey, look.
I bet she's having fun for the Alabama fan.
Yeah, no, she's definitely having fun. Was not having fun until about 40 seconds left in the game Saturday, as most Alabama fans weren't. But just a little bit about the Vitamin Shop. Look, we're really excited. Vitamin Shop is it's a national chain. There are about 600 corporate stores around the U.S. They just started franchising. Me and a couple other partners have one in Olive Branch, which is now open. It's at 5338 Goodman Road, right east of Target. So right there in the middle of everything, across the street from Planet Fitness. And we have one coming up in Oxford, which will be in the Oxford Galleria, right beside Dick's Sporting Goods. It's basically sandwiched in between Dick's Sporting Goods and Bath and Body Works in the Oxford Galleria. That one will be opening up in around February. So really excited to get these open. And look, we are your one-stop shop for health and wellness. We've got all the vitamins and minerals, sports nutrition, probiotics, prenatal, you name it, from vitamins, energy drinks, energy snacks, energy supplements, all that stuff. I call us, Rob, I think I explained it to you. We're an Apple store for vitamins. So you walk in and it is a real inviting place, easy to get around. We got health enthusiasts that'll help you with any questions that you have. So really excited to be a sponsor here.
Yeah, and you're going to be sponsoring the Rebel Yell Report. Yancy Porter will be on just a minute down in Oxford. So we're going to get him to spread the word like wildfire about the location there in Olive Branch. One of the things about the Vitamin Shop, when you go in there, you do have a staff that does know what they're talking about. They're not going to say, get this, get that, just to sell something because it's more expensive than the other. I love goo. I love shot blocks. The stingers are good. You've got all that, but it's those probiotics. And, real quick, I know you're not a doctor, but you're a partner in this. You're very smart. It's necessary to know what you're buying. What are some things people, when they go in there, need to be asking before? And they can go, where's your website where they can find information before they hit the store?
Yeah. Look, so we've got a website, it's vitaminshop.com. You can buy on the website and pick up in the store. Super easy. Our Instagram is vitaminshop_Olive Branch. And that's where you can find all of our deals. Look, we've got deals every day, discounts every day, all that. So you can find that on the Instagram page. But look, if you're coming in, the first thing you say, hey, what are you feeling? What are you trying to accomplish with your vitamin or minerals or supplements needs? Are you trying to get energy? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to build muscle? I mean, you say any of that to our health enthusiasts and they'll point you in the right place. Do you have issues with certain supplements? Does it upset your stomach? I've done this, Rob, for you and I have taken supplements for as long as we've been alive.
Yep.
And you name it, I've tried it. So,
Yeah.
So, and our health enthusiasts are right there. They've tried it. They're not going to recommend anything that they haven't done themselves. So that's where we really differentiate ourselves in our health enthusiasts.
Yeah, Yancy Porter is on with us right now, Rebel Yell Hotline, and that's Monday night 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis, and also Super Talk Mississippi all over the state. Yancy, this is the new sponsor. He's going to be sponsoring the Rebel Yell Hotline when you're on every week. Justin Ross, I've known him quite a long time. He's opening up a vitamin shop in Olive Branch, Mississippi, and one in Oxford. Tell Yancy, who lives in Oxford, has been there for a long, long time, where in Oxford this location is going to be.
Yancy, it's right there in the Oxford Galleria. If you know where Dick's Sporting Goods is in the Oxford Galleria, it is right beside it. So we've started construction probably last week. So you'll start seeing some construction there. We'll have a sign up there in a couple of weeks. So excited to get that thing open in probably February.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'll get your number for Rob and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Looking
Absolutely. Listen, Justin, man, I'm looking forward to having you on here because you're also a sports fan. Tell Bethany congratulations on getting the win.
And I'm sorry to you, Rob. Sorry to you. I was feeling for you.
Hey, look, I should have been at the Gilded Edge up there having a cold road soda.
That would have helped.
Yeah.
Thanks,
We're
Rob.
honored to have you as a partner and as a sponsor. It means the world to us. And thank you so much. And every day, if you got something you need us to pass along, do it. And that's what we're here for. Okay.
You got it, Rob. Thanks. Yancy, good talking to you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
To you, big guy.
All right. Let's get going here. Yancy, I'm fired up. I've known Justin a long time. And last week he said, hey, I want to start being a sponsor on your show, Sidelines. And I said, he's open in Olive Branch, Mississippi, and Oxford. So, man, a lot of people want to move to Oxford. Who doesn't? You go down in the Delta, a lot of these small towns, the people have left Vance and Lambert and Marks and whatever. They're pouring into Oxford. But what's happened in Oxford 2 of the last 3 years is the Rebels have won 10 games. And in your other job is Bob Newhart, my therapist, after the Iron Bowl loss the other night. You made me feel pretty good. That was one of the best conversations. I was up there I said, Audrey, Yancy needs to be a therapist, man. He can calm the waters, man. But let me think about this. 10 wins in 2 of the last 3 seasons at Ole Miss, and y'all want more. Because I got a lot of Ole Miss friends, and I text with them every day. Beef, Lynch, Chris Perkins, Stacy Sims, God almighty. They're a gazillion of Will McDonald, Bob Farrell. And Bob was good friends with JoJo. Was JoJo the bass player for Widespread Panic?
JoJo? No, he's the keyboardist.
Keyboard. Yeah. Bob, ask him about Bobby Farrell. Bobby's a good friend. And so anyway, there's a new, Doug Dean brought this up in the first segment. Back-to-back, 2 of the last 3 years, the Rebels have won 10 games. Let's talk about where you go from here. And I hope nobody quits on the team before the bowl game because you got a chance to make history. And if you're an Ole Miss player that's part of the winningest team in school history, that's better than NIL.
Yeah, I've not heard anything about opting out for bowl games, opting out of the bowl game for the draft or anything like that. So I don't think that's going to happen. Those usually happen in smaller bowls, but we'll see. We'll see if that happens or not, but I don't anticipate that being a factor. Now, you can have some guys that opt out and transfer that didn't get any playing time that are trying to find a new home. We'll see about that, but I haven't heard about that. But, yeah, there will be turnover, unquestionably. But, yeah, I think to get to that next level, they've just got to get deeper on the offensive line. That really, reared its ugly head. The last 2.5 games there, it all happened the week leading up to the Georgia game. They had, their best offensive lineman, right tackle, Micah Pettis. He separated his heel, and then it was a domino effect. Then 2 other starters got hurt, and before you know it, they're only playing with one starter against Georgia on the offensive line that was playing in his position, and it never really kind of got back to where it was after that point. So they got to get more depth on the offensive line. I think they need another big-time playmaker at wideout. And then they got to get faster in the secondary, especially at safety. I think those are three areas that I'd really key in on if I were Ole Miss this offseason, especially in this transfer portal coming up.
Well, nobody's doing a better job, at least as far as I'm concerned, as Lane Kiffin and that staff. He's obviously got extra sets of eyeballs looking at the tape on the guys that are available in the portal, but they're doing a great job of vetting and finding the right fits. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, man. Look, Lane is done as good a job as anybody in the country making this, making the transfer to this portal era in the NIL era, and that's why Ole Miss has been in the position they're in. He does a great job evaluating players, like you said, seeing if they fit into his system or not, and and a great job of using the money that is available in the NIL at Ole Miss. It's not endless money. They're as competitive as probably anybody in the country, outside of one or two schools in the NIL. But you got a budget, and you got to decide how you're going to use that money for these players. And he's been ahead of the curve, so to speak, going into this new era that we've had the last few years.
Yeah, and I look at Lane Kiffin, 24-10, you lost at Alabama. The Georgia game, I didn't see that coming. I thought Ole Miss could win that game. But what areas in recruiting, and you've got Kamarion Franklin already out of Lake Cormorant, Mississippi. He's number 1 or 2, depending on the list that you look at, but he's a badass. Let's just call it what it is. Look at his numbers. He's a playmaker. But where are they looking to make the biggest gains, or do they need to make the biggest jump?
Well, the kind of where they're hanging their hat on this recruiting cycle is the defensive line. We've talked about this for the last couple of years, Rob. Being an offensive guy, you would think that Lane would really be focusing on offensive players, but he continues to bring in. They have 6 defensive linemen committed, 4 that are ranked inside the top 247 players in the country. And they're looking to flip Charleston Collins out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, that is a top 50 national recruit, a defensive tackle out of there. So they're really, he wants to set the tone there on the defensive line each and every year. Yeah. But as I said a little bit earlier, they got to get deeper on the offensive line. They got to get faster in the secondary. And they need another playmaker at wide receiver, and they need one big stud middle linebacker that allows Suntarine Perkins really to free him up to play on the outside. And that's where I think the biggest areas that need to be addressed.
When you look at defensive linemen, in the 22 season, you felt like they had 12 defensive linemen. This year, your number was about 8, and you're very accurate. You're very precise when you break down Ole Miss. You want to be 2 and 3 deep on the front 7. In fact, you have to be if you want to get to Atlanta. After Alabama and Georgia, you got Ole Miss is the 3rd best team in the SEC this year. How close do you think Ole Miss is to being one of the 2 teams that goes to Atlanta next year? Because Jackson Dart, I forget, he's only 19 years old.
Well, the portal will have a say-so on that. Your current roster, who all stays, right, and who all you pick up. They've got a really I think this is his best class of high school recruits that he has committed so far. They're going to bring back Jackson Dart. They're going to bring back Bentley and Judkins there at running back. We'll see if Trey Harris decides to go in the draft or not, their star receiver. I'm going to keep an eye on that. They're close, but they need to pick up 2 or 3 stud offensive linemen, and they need to get, like I said, a couple more guys back there in the secondary to get a little bit more, play better in space. They're close, but they still, that Georgia to me is head and shoulders better than everybody else, and they're still in the SEC. You still got to get through them. But roster turnover is so high under Kiffin. I believe there were 45 new players on the team this year. And, he doesn't play with 38, 40 players. So there's going to be a lot of players that transfer out. That's just the era we're in. If you're not playing, players want to play. So some of that depth could be leaving. Who do they pick up? But look, when you bring back your quarterback and your two stud receiver running backs, we'll see with the offensive line who all stays, who all leaves. But they could return for their 5 starters on the offensive line. They just need to get some quality depth, as we saw against Georgia when those offensive linemen went out and you had those 3 starters out. The guys backing them up just were not to that level. So they just got to bring in – a lot of it's going to be hinging on this portal coming up, Rob.
Yeah. You talk about Ulysses Bentley IV, who transferred from SMU, combined with Quinshon Judkins, who will just be a junior next year. That 1-2 punch, is that the best since Thunder and Lightning in '88?
Thunder and Lightning, that's a great memory there. Evans and Quinshon was really special last year as well. I put it on par with that. It's really, Bentley could decide to go pro. You never know. He's been in college now for 4 or 5 years. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on too. Does Bentley come back? Does he go pro?
Yeah, Bentley. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to have that 1-2 punch in Lane's offense. They just run the ball too much. And when you're playing the hurry up offense where you're not getting much of a breather, you've got to have that second stud running back.
Well, Ulysses Bentley IV, it's like he's shot out of a cannon. He's so fast and he's hard to take down. He's got incredible balance. But I remember Thunder and Lightning, Robert Smith, one of those running backs back in 1988. Bill Curry was the coach at Alabama. Ole Miss went to Oxford and won, I think, 24-10. And Bobby Humphrey maybe had broken his leg. And I see Ole Miss right now. They get this 11th win. If I'm Ole Miss, I am putting everything into getting this 11th win because that's history. I mean, again, it's better than NIL. So that'll be a fun one to watch. Trey Harris transferred from Louisiana Tech via the portal. When he's healthy, is he one of the best 3 or 4 receivers that you've seen at Ole Miss in the last 6 years? And you've had some of the absolute best in college football.
Yeah, Trey's really special. There's been so many good ones, Rob. He's up there. He's up there, and it's going to be important to try to talk him into coming back and not going in the draft. There's no question about it. I would have really liked to see, what they could have done if they were really close on Keon Coleman, who ended up at Florida State. And they need that 1-2 punch like that, like you see it running back there, receiver. And look, Wade and Watkins are really, really good receivers, and they're nice additions there. But they need that dynamic, just really big time dynamic to go with the Trey Harris. I think that could put them over the top.
Yeah, and it's hard on the offensive line. And you mentioned 3 of your starters were out in that Georgia game. And let's go back to something you said earlier. And Ole Miss went from a zone blocking offensive line scheme with Jake Thornton, who transferred or actually took a job at Auburn with Hugh Freeze. And you bring in the new guy, and you were questioning, what he was going to be like, the guy that came in from NC State to coach the offensive line at Ole Miss. But they switched it around after the Alabama loss. That was the biggest turning point for this whole season, in my opinion. Agree or disagree, or am I drinking way too much Irish coffee in the morning?
No question. When
Too
they
much
went
coffee?
to that man, yeah, no. That was the turning point because they simply could not get that man-on-man blocking scheme down. That's not what Lane Kiffin's offense is about. And I believe they went from a little under 97 yards, I believe what they were averaging after that Alabama game, to averaging, a little bit over 200 yards. Now, the year before, they were averaging 320 yards. But in the SEC play, once that started, they really started running the ball like they had the prior years under Kiffin. And it wasn't only losing the 3 offensive linemen against Georgia, is that Lane uses that pro mindset. He doesn't play 7, 8 offensive linemen. Those 5 offensive linemen have played the whole season. So they had no time to gel or play together. And then the other 2 offensive linemen were playing other positions that they were not accustomed to playing. So everything was thrown out of whack all at once at Georgia, and it was not pretty. I don't know if Ole Miss would have hung or beat Georgia if they would all been healthy or not. But they certainly, that threw a monkey in the wrench, and there was not much they could do against Georgia. But Georgia's just that much better than everybody else right now, I believe. I think you'll see that Saturday too.
Yeah, they have stockpiled a boatload of talent. But, go back to, okay, I don't know of anybody that now, but you're part of a great team with Chuck Rounsel, Harry Harrison, Gary Darby, Gordon when he's healthy on there with you, Rebel Yell Hotline. But you do such a great job of breaking down what's going on in Ole Miss. You don't sugarcoat it. You just call it like you see it. But you said last year, before anybody really knew who this kid was, how good Quinshon Judkins was at a park crossing. Auburn and Alabama totally ignored him. And then you talked about, again, I go back to this offensive line issue, how big a deal that was to go from zone blocking to this man. And I wonder, was it Kiffin that said, hey, this isn't working, you got to fix it? Well, he's the head coach. Don't underestimate how smart Lane Kiffin is. That's what I see. You can look, Tennessee fans, everywhere he's ever been, they have their opinions of him. He can flat out coach. He can call plays. But that saved the season. They could have gone the other way, and they ended up 10-2. Hell of a year considering all of the offensive line issues they had early on. I think that offensive line coach and Kiffin deserve a ton of credit, and the players, of course.
Yeah, I mean, look, as you said, Kiffin's one of the true elite football coaches in America. You could make an argument with Kirby, no question about it, and Nick Saban, no question about it, and they're right there in your own conference. But you can't name 2 or 3 more better pure coaches than Lane Kiffin. And it like you said, the intelligence is of him. He would make a great scientist. Even he's just he's a highly, highly intelligent guy. I would love to know his IQ. He's pretty much smarter than everybody.
Science. Remember Sir Thomas Dolby? that was a great one. But no, he is. I mean, you look at Kiffin, he's measured in what he says. When you grow up the son of a coach like Monty Kiffin, you're around it all the time. His childhood memories are of being in coaches meetings and just being around it at practice every day. I think he's just from a distance, he looks happier than he's ever been. And I think it's because he looked at taking another job at Auburn last year. I don't know how, whatever, but I think his kids, probably more than I've ever seen from it, he's happier than he's ever been. And he's got his family there in Oxford, and he's a perfect fit. That's what I see. And when you got all that going for you, it makes it easier to coach because you're not distracted.
Yeah, he's just, he's comfortable with who he is now. Kiffin quit drinking. He had his daughter move in from California in with him. His son's here a ton. There's rumors that he could be coming to Oxford as well. He's settled. He's comfortable with himself now. He loves Oxford. He has total control over the program, like a Nick Saban does at Alabama. There's nobody meddling with his program. I mean, look, I don't even know anyone outside of his mentor that even really knows Lane Kiffin. He has total control over that program, which is so unique in today's environment, especially with the NILs now, where you have alumni that are giving so much money to the university to get players, right? And if they're going to spend that money, they're going to be in the coach's ears about, hey, I spent this on this player. He needs to be playing. He doesn't have that at Ole Miss. He has total, and that's something that passes by that people don't see, because everywhere else, you look at the Auburns and the Texas A&Ms and these places where you have these alumni giving so much money to, there's so much meddling going on inside the program, and that's important to Kiffin. It's important to Nick Saban. And he's just really comfortable with who he is now, and he's as settled as he's ever been in his life.
Yeah, and that right there, having total control. Nick Saban has it, Kirby Smart has it, Lane Kiffin has it. Why other coaches don't demand it and say, if you want me to be your coach, you want to go big, like Kirby Smart told Georgia, if you're not in it to go big, I'm not your man. If you are, I'll take the job.
That's a great question. And it's only going to be harder to get total control, because once you bring NIL into the equation and these alumni are paying these large sum of money to get players to your university, they're going to want to have some control with the program naturally. So it's really hard to pull off as a head coach to get that control over your program. I mean, look, Kiffin uses the Nick Saban model to a T. He doesn't allow assistant coaches to talk to the media. Lane's the only voice that comes out of the program. Everything that Nick Saban does, Lane Kiffin does. I think going to work for Nick Saban really changed the path of Lane's career. I think Saban really saved Lane Kiffin. That's why he wants to beat him so bad.
And I think people confuse that with. I don't think he hates Nick Saban. I think he's very competitive. That's a good competition is the spice of life, as Coach Pratt used to always tell us at CBHS in Math Scurvy.
No, Lane Kiffin worships Nick Saban. He absolutely worships him. I mean, look, if when it's all said and done, I promise you, Lane will say that Nick Saban's the greatest coach to ever coach football. There's no question about it that anybody that thinks that Lane Kiffin does not like Nick Saban does not know Lane Kiffin. He absolutely worships Nick Saban.
Yeah, I like this one from Harold. I wonder if that's weird, Harold, in Birmingham. Ole Miss will be a preseason top 10 team going in the next year. And I think they will. We know guys will leave in the portal and all that, but they got something really good. They're really good. And again, Texas has 10 times as many people as the state of Mississippi, but Ole Miss, they dominate with A&M. Don't on what they're doing at Ole Miss. It's been fun to watch. We listened to some of the show last night on Rebel Yell Hotline. Catch Yancy Porter and the team Monday nights, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis and all over Super Talk Mississippi. One last question before we take a break. Rodney or Tyler Insider will be with us. Stay on with us if you can, Yancy, though, because I know Rodney. He is one of the original guys, just one of the good guys. OG. I wanted you to say that, but he really is, and he works like a rented mule. He puts out content like you do, knows the program, and he just calls it like he sees it. He doesn't just say things to get you to subscribe. But anyway, Chris Beard, the basketball team, how big a hole does he have to dig out of? Look, we all love Kermit Davis. I mean, that's one of the nicest people, hell of a coach. Unfortunately, it did not work out at Ole Miss. But now you got Chris Beard coming in. This guy is what I call a Lazarus coach. You know, no matter where he goes, he can take a program that's spinning and circling the drain and turn it around. Nobody will outwork him. I mean, you're talking a Bruce Pearl type of hire.
Yeah, he's special. You know, he got dealt a blow last night. The NCAA came and ruled CC and Brandon Murray, their 2-star transfers. They did not give them a waiver. So now they're appealing that decision. The curious thing about it is that they just had 3 players from Cincinnati, California, and Pittsburgh that were 2-time transfers, just like the CC and Murray, that they ruled eligible just the week before last. So, you know, there's no consistency with the NCAA, but those 2 players are very key for this team because CC brings an offensive presence to that center spot that Sharp does not bring, and Murray brings, you know, another shooter from the outside that Ole Miss lacks right now. Those are 2 big key pieces, but hey, that's life of sports. You got to play with what you got. They're getting in a better offensive flow right now. They got to get a little bit better with their defensive rotations. And they will. I mean, that is, you know, Beard is always going to have great defenses. So they'll get that together. But yesterday was a blow for this year's team with that ruling from the NCAA.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, if it was Ohio State, they'd be eligible. It wouldn't even be an issue, you know. Chris Beard somehow, some way will overcome it. But it's going to be fun to watch him build Ole Miss basketball. The Pavilion, look, no matter what the team's record is, whatever, they got the best food because they got Raisin Cane chicken tenders and stuff there. And they've got most concession food at arenas, stadiums, whatever is not good. They got really good food there. And nobody like that Auburn arena is more than 43 feet away from the court. That's a tough place to play. It's a sound chamber. It's just loud, man. Have you been to a concert yet in the Pavilion?
I have not. That is something that they need to do more of. I believe they had a big country singer concert. I'm not much into new country music. It has to be country music from the 80s or before for me to like it. But
correct.
No, I have not, but I'm sure it was fantastic because the sound system is second to none inside that arena for sure.
Well, you're like me, Murder on Music Row. Most of this stuff today is a combination between country and rap. I call it crap. And
I call it
just give
Nashville country. I don't like Nashville country.
Yeah. Well, that's why, you know, think about years ago, Waylon and Willie and all them, they left. They didn't want to be conformist. And I tell you, a man that lived right down the street from where I grew up in Memphis, Charlie Rich. I love Charlie Rich. Listen to that song, Keep On Rolling with the Flow, Most Beautiful Girl in the World. You know, just so many great country writer songs because they wrote about their real lives. Now they're just writing about a script that somebody in California sent via AI, and that's not country. Does Taylor Swift's name come to mind? But anyway, I digress. Yancy, love having you on here. Man, you know your stuff. Again, catch you Monday night, 6 p.m., Sports 56 WHBQ, Rebel Yell Hotline, and all over on Super Talk Mississippi. It's 2 syllables, folks. And Yancy, 11 wins. Where do you think the Rebels are going to play their bowl game? Any idea? Any idea on where the Rebels will play their bowl game, Yancy? All right, we've lost him. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. We got Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, coming up. And I will be right back to talk more college football after this.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I'm Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back with Yancy Porter, and Rodney Orr is on with us right now. And Yancy, we all know that Rodney is one of the OGs. You call him the original good guys. And you know what I love about Rodney is he didn't send some text after that gut wrenching loss the other day. He is just he's just
couldn't do that.
I mean, look, Rodney, and I wouldn't do the same thing to y'all either. I mean, but I got to tell you, college football, man, it makes you have an iron gut, doesn't it, Rodney? Nerves of steel.
Yeah. Well, you never can tell what's going to happen in that game, can you? I mean,
no.
Have you ever seen anything crazier? I mean, not just that particular play or game, but it just happens every time, basically, down there, especially at Auburn. It seems like there's something crazy that's going to happen. And, I'll go back to this, back to the 2010 Alabama-Auburn game. I'll never forget, before the game, I was having a conversation with Tyler Watts, the former Alabama quarterback, who now is the color analyst on the radio broadcast. And, Tyler and I were talking, somebody interrupted and said, "Hey, Tyler, give me your expert analysis on this game." And Tyler said, "Well, all I can tell you is that it's going to look like one team's going to run away with it, and then all of a sudden the other team's going to come back and win." And lo and behold, when it was 24-0, Alabama was up in the first half, I said, got to be careful. Tyler's right. Anything can happen. And you saw what happened, came back. So it just kind of typifies the game. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. And Rodney, we got Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline on here with us. Yancy, jump in.
Yeah, I just, I really hurt for Freeze, honestly, watching that. I just know I didn't even have the gumption to even text him after that. I know still to this second right now, he's probably has slept about one total hour since that game, questioning himself for sending two there. It was like 4th and 25, Ole Miss, Arkansas there. I'm sure it feels like just relived it. Just something that never, ever, ever should have happened. No disrespect to Alabama. You know how highly I think of Saban in that program, but they had no business winning that game. Auburn outplayed them from the first snap to the last snap, and to lose that game is gut wrenching. And I feel bad for Freeze. I really do. He's, that team for Auburn had no business outplaying Alabama, but Freeze just has Saban's number. He just knows how to scheme him like nobody else. I think that could have been Auburn's best offensive day, Rob. Am I wrong on that? Total yardage, the whole package. I know he's thinking, wait till I get – my quarterbacks and receivers in here, what I'm going to do. But at the same time, he's like, how much could that have sped the program up to getting it to where I want it to be? And then on the other hand, Nick Saban's the GOAT. I mean, to win that game when you had no business winning is special. That's what great teams do. They find a way to win a game that they had no business to win. And, you got to hand it to Saban. You got to hand it to Jalen for making that throw. There was only one spot in that end zone that you could have made that throw to, regardless if the Auburn defender got twisted up or not. It's gut wrenching though. I tell you, just Freeze is a very dear personal friend of mine, and so I really do. I hate it for him. It hurt me because I know how much it hurts Freeze. But that Auburn Alabama game, that one, there's been so many classics, but I would have to say that one beat them all in my eyes.
Yeah, Rodney, good commentary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, look, like we said last week, I certainly felt like Auburn was going to be a big challenge. I felt like the New Mexico State game was nothing but a mirage. I mean, meaning that, look, I'm pretty sure that Auburn spent a lot of time on Alabama, before the New Mexico State game. So,
yeah,
that really didn't surprise me. I thought Auburn, what surprised me actually, and I might have said this last week, was how Auburn played against New Mexico State, because they had played extremely well against Arkansas on the road. And, you looked at them and thought they were an improving team. And they are. I mean, so, but, it is what it is. Again, I think, Alabama, here's the key for Alabama. You made a lot of mistakes. Okay. Auburn played extremely well. But a lot of the things that happen to you happen because your mistakes. And, I think that's one of the key things. I mean, it's execution, and Alabama's got to execute a lot better than what they did against Auburn. Now, again, I give Auburn a lot of the credit too. Offensively, their run game was really good. They had Alabama, and I say off balance. You say, well, how'd they get off balance? They only had 91 yards passing, but I think the things that they were probably doing offensively in the run game were, Alabama was having to adjust to. It was probably some things that they haven't seen from Auburn on tape. And, Auburn just did a great job of executing those things. And they did hit a few timely passes as well, even though they did not have much yardage in that regard. But, what can you say? I think Alabama, I think you look at Milroe, he had 107 yards rushing. He had 259 passing. Frankly, he missed some opportunities in the run game where he could have picked up huge chunks of yardage. And I think that's the one thing he has to grow, the one area. He has to become more decisive as a runner, because I think he can really challenge defenses and, be a major, major threat and thorn for defensive coordinators because of his ability to run and make things happen in the run game. So I think moving forward, hopefully, we see more kind of similar what he did against LSU as a runner, because I think that's where he can really help Alabama's offense, be very, very successful.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Yancy.
I think the good news for Alabama is kind of like Auburn the week before, right? They lose in New Mexico or New Mexico State, and Freeze was able to get their attention and get them to really focus, brought them down to earth. And although Alabama did not lose that game, Saban has their attention. And I think Alabama's going to come out and play a much better game this Saturday because of it. I mean, we see this happen all the time in college football, even in pro football. When you play bad one week, they a lot of times they come out and play their best game the next week. As far as Milroe using his legs, I totally agree, but that's just part of the development of Milroe understanding defensive concepts and reading the defenses better, right? He's probably trying to force himself to stay in the pocket, not run the ball and make throws. But as he becomes more and more comfortable, which he is, Milroe has grown. I've watched Alabama closely all season. He's grown game by game this season. You took him to where he was at the beginning, the first 3 or 4 games of these last 3 or 4 games, and I wasn't even looking at the same quarterback. So he's growing. He's growing every single game. I do agree with you. He's got to use his legs more when it's available. But I think really could play in Alabama's hands, playing as poorly as they did against Auburn, because I think Saban will have their attention to the second in preparation for this Georgia game.
Rodney, along those lines, I'm going to throw this at you. Oregon has one win. They got it Friday against Oregon State, against a ranked team all year. Utah's not going to be in the top 25, I don't think. And then you look at Alabama. no team in the history of the 4-team playoff format has come from 8th into the Final Four. But if Alabama beats number 1 ranked Georgia, there's no way they're not in the Final Four. Agree or disagree?
I would probably say it this way. I would think that there's a greater chance that they would be, but I wouldn't say no way either way. I mean, just me, because you can't predict. I mean, again, I think if they beat Georgia, obviously in the SEC championship game, then it's going to probably be a very difficult decision to keep Alabama out as the SEC champion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would agree with you from the standpoint of, I think it would be in all likelihood they would make it, but, I don't rule anything out, in terms of what could happen, because I know it's going to be a lot of strong debates, all across the board with the teams that are in that group. And, we'll see, But I think, Rob, if, for the Alabama fans out there, just me looking at it, I mean, really, that's something that Alabama can't control, obviously, what happens by a committee. But what they can control is what happens on Saturday. So, I mean, if they beat Georgia and they win the SEC championship, I'm not saying be pleased with that, but at the same time, I don't think you can really I don't think that there should be a lot of disappointment in terms of, how this season went, because actually it should be a very encouraging, thing to be able to, win the SEC, come from where they've come from after the Texas game, South Florida. And, if they beat Georgia, snap their winning streak and all of those things.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a great accomplishment. I think you have to look at it from the positive, but, hopefully if that happens, if they do win, that, they'll get an opportunity to continue on in the playoffs.
Hey, we're talking with Rodney Orr, Tighter Insider, only $48 a year. Be a subscriber. You're crazy if you're not. They have a great forum. Rodney talks about that. It's nonstop, 24/7, every day of the year, leap years included. This brought to you by May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa and Northport. 2 locations. Dr. Wayne May started all this back in 1964 as a young veterinarian, fresh out of vet school at the Auburn College of Veterinary Medicine. And Waller and Guy May, both fraternity brothers of mine, Sigma News with me at Auburn, continue that legacy. They're great associate doctors, the staff, everybody in there. When you go to May Veterinary Clinic in Tuscaloosa and Northport, they give you 110%. We've taken critters down there before. They do a remarkable job. They're wagging their tails. They love it. They actually look forward to go and see Dr. May and everybody there. They also have a dog and cat daycare facility called Camp May, where you can drop off your animals. They've got an outdoor pool. If you've got a bunch of cats, they have connecting cat condos. So if you've got 2 or 3 cats, they can all stay there together and play together with balls of yarn and get hairballs in their 3. They just have a great time. They drop off on Sundays and pick up 3 to 5 p.m. May Veterinary Clinic, Tuscaloosa, Northport. Proud to be associated with them and to have them as a sponsor of the Tighter Insider Report with Rodney Orr. And Yancy, jump back in here. I love this back and forth question, and I love to do when I roll in my guest, regular Yancy that knows Ole Miss, but he knows Alabama like I do. But Rodney, you are Tighter Insider. There is no other place to get the information. And on Tuesday nights, people, 6:30 on YouTube, catch it live. You can get Tighter Insider with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, who's on with us on Thursday mornings. And he always says, you never know what you're going to be talking about till you get there. And that's what makes it so much fun. And, here's an interesting question that just came in, and let's get Yancy back on. But Rodney, question from a listener down in, let's see, Northport, actually, says, I wonder what the storyline would have had Alabama lost. Those questions that you always say, like, what if Chris Davis had been knocked down by Robinson Therese 10 yards away from the goal line? There never would have been a kick. You remember that was, if you go back and look at that, it was close. But that, by the way, Rodney and Yancy, that corner of the south end zone at Auburn has been the spot where Auburn has had some horrible last-second losses. And I think they just need to that grass up and put in new turf or something in that corner. But anyway, jump in here, Yancy and Rodney. This is great conversation.
Well, let me say this. Just you mentioned the kick six. That was the 10th anniversary on Saturday.
Yeah,
didn't they? I think they might have honored that team. So then you had another crazy ending, and but looking at that, thinking about that kick six, Rob, that you brought it up, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but Alabama might have actually lost that game when they lost to Colorado, when they actually beat Colorado State earlier that season, when Vinny Sinceri, who was the holder for Alabama's place kicking, he was the holder. He got injured and was out for the rest of the year. And, the guy they replaced him with, I don't even really remember off the top of my head who it was, but he wasn't a defender. He wasn't a great tackler, that's for sure. But had Vinny Sinceri been in there holding I've often wondered, would Chris Davis have taken that thing back? Because Vinny Sinceri was such a great player, such a great safety, and great tackler and all those things. But anyway, it is what it is. Just an afterthought. No, it's as you look forward to this game here against Georgia, it's going to be interesting because obviously Georgia's a great team. I'm not questioning anything about them. The one thing I would say is, looking at them, maybe they haven't played the most difficult schedule. Maybe they haven't really been challenged, but there's been a couple of teams that have, and I think Missouri was one of them. And it's just going to be interesting to see, can Alabama line up and run the football against this Georgia defense? Can Alabama's defensive line, which I don't think played very well at all for the most part especially in the first half, against Auburn, can they regroup? And it's a different kind of offense they're going to be facing. I mean, they're going to be facing more of a conventional run game. So it's going to be interesting to see how the line of scrimmage goes in this game.
I totally agree. That's where it's always one, right? But I don't think Alabama is going to be able to just run the ball traditionally. I think they're going to have to get their yards in the running game on chunk plays from busted plays with Milroe scrambling. That front seven from Georgia they're on a different level. I mean, I said it earlier. I think Georgia's on a different level than everybody else. I don't think there's anybody close to Georgia this year. It would take a lot of crazy things in my eyes for Bama to win that game. But if there's anybody who can do it, it's Nick Saban now. Nobody thought they'd win the SEC championship game last year, right? And Georgia, they were on a different level than everybody else last year as well. So anything can happen. I think the motivation with Georgia, am I correct that Bama's won the last 3 against Georgia in the SEC championship game? Is that right, Rodney?
Yes, Georgia has not beaten Alabama in the SEC championship game. Of course, they beat them in 2021. Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. And then they had the rematch in the national championship game, and Georgia won that game.
Sure, but Georgia's not won the SEC championship.
Right.
Yeah,
not over Alabama, correct?
Have they won one yet?
I'm sorry.
Has Georgia won an SEC championship under Kirby?
Well, they obviously last year they won it. They won it after the 17.
Yes.
Yeah, they beat LSU last year, and then of course they beat Auburn. After the 2017 season, they lost to Alabama in 18. 19, of course, was LSU, and then 20 was Alabama, and then, of course, 21 was Alabama again. So last year, they did win it, and they won it in 17.
Yeah, I think Alabama, now they can get some chunk plays. Milroe on the scrambling and broken down plays. You can't defend that sometimes. So that's where Alabama will have to make their hay, and obviously, they're going to have to make their hay on the long deep ball. That's what Milroe.
I agree with you.
They're going to have to do it the Hugh Freeze way, right? Make a lot of chunk plays.
I think you're right, and I think those plays, Milroe's legs, could open up the run game. for Alabama in different ways. And again, I'm like you. I think Milroe is better as a creator. And what I mean by that is, when he's in the pocket and he gets flushed out and all of a sudden he finds broken field, that's where he's most dangerous. I think he's better that way than he is on design runs,
Correct.
and
I
I'm like
agree.
I'm like you too. I think that Milroe has ability to strike deep. And I think that's the one area where I think you can challenge Georgia is, deep. I mean, they've been hit deep in a lot of these games that they've, either lost or almost lost, like last year against Ohio State or against Alabama in the 2021 SEC championship game. Bryce Young kind of wore them out. He threw for 421 yards. But so again, it's a real challenge. It's going to be an interesting game to watch and to kind of see. And again, I look at Georgia. They got a lot of incredible weapons offensively. The way they utilize those guys, whether it's McConkey, they got other guys, Bell. They got obviously Brock Bowers. In my opinion, was to me there's probably not a better player in the country. Certainly not at his position. They got a lot of weapons, man. Beck's doing a fantastic job. They've only given up 8 sacks on that offensive line. So, I mean, it's going to be a real challenge for this Alabama defense.
The thing about Georgia to me is the development of Beck, right? I mean, he's Jaden Daniels, he's playing in a league of his own, but outside of him, there's nobody playing as good as Beck. And the development of him has been huge and critical for that Georgia team. And kudos to the offensive coordinator and everybody else that's had a hand in developing that, because he's playing at a really, really high level.
Well, Beck, he's been around a while. He's waited his turn. He's developed. He was originally committed to Alabama. You guys may know that. He was committed to Florida at one time, I think, as a baseball player. But, committed to Alabama. And then, you know what? Jake Fromm was originally committed to Alabama as well, if you remember. So,
wow.
Yeah, and, so it's an interesting storyline, but Beck's done a fantastic job. I mean, he's like you said, I mean, if you give him time, if he has time, he's going to pick you apart, man, because they have receivers, they have a lot of talent. They're hard to defend. So somehow Alabama's got to get him uncomfortable. Can they do it? We'll find out Saturday, but they've got to figure out a way to do it.
Well, here's the key is ever since their right tackle returned against Ole Miss, nobody's touched that. I mean, that offensive line for Georgia is playing at such a high level right now. And, not only the development of Beck, but the offensive line, who was giving them a little bit of problems before the right tackle returned there against Ole Miss. And once he came back in and that slid everybody else in the right position for Georgia, good luck. I mean, it's just really hard to get any kind of pressure on Georgia and their QB. And if Alabama can generate some consistent pressure and make Beck feel uncomfortable, maybe that throws Georgia off its rhythm offensively. Because right now, offensively, I mean, you can't stop Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, guys, unfortunately, we've run out of time. It's going to be a fun game. I don't know if I'm going to be there or not. We may be going to Atlanta Thursday or Friday.
Game of the year.
I know. It's going to be huge. I don't think there's any way, Rodney, they keep Alabama out of the 14 playoff. Look, Ohio State, would be in because they have minders, but Rodney, give us a score prediction real quick and let them know how they can follow you. And let me just say, most often we see the face of Christ in the league. And remember, folks, I like to say this every day. We are the greatest country in the history of the world. We, the people. Forget about the government. We, the people. Freedom of speech. We are free people. And we are free to make predictions on all these games. So, Rodney, give me a score.
Well,
and we'll talk about it next week.
Well, Rob, I'm gonna drop one on you here, due to my agreement with this TV show WVUA. I can't give my score prediction until tonight, but I will say this: I think you can guess who I'll predict. Let me just say this real quick. After Alabama, when Alabama beat Clemson in the 2008 Chick-fil-A Classic, the opening game, I said I'll never pick against Nick Saban again. So that'll give you a clue who I'm gonna pick. Can't tell you the score, but that's who I'm gonna pick.
All right. Look, man, great stuff as always. Tighter Insider, folks, only $48 a year. Cost is only an issue in the absence of any added value. Thanks, both of you guys and all of our guests on this show today and our listeners, sponsors, and viewers. We'll see you tomorrow. We are out of here.